going to call to order the 12 o'clock regular PSVS meeting of April 24th, 2025. As Vice Chair, in the absence of the Chairman, I'll preside over the meeting unless and until he arrives. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Member Abernathy? Here. Member Avery?
Here.
Member Campbell?
Here.
Member Dewey?
Here.
Member Harmon?
Here.
Member Madland? Member Ortiz? Member Rojas Mora?
The next item on the agenda is the public comment section of the agenda. For agenda items, statements for items listed on today's agenda are given a 2-minute time limit, 20 minutes total per agenda item. If you have a written comment, or if you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, give them to the clerk, who will give copies to the committee. If you're here to make a public statement, please fill out a public speaker card and hand it to the city clerk. Madam Clerk, do we have any speaker cards?
Vice Chair Campbell, we have not received any speaker cards for agenda items, nor have we received speaker cards for non-agenda item public statements.
Okay. Let's move on to item 3 then, the adoption of minutes. I'm assuming the members of the committee have all received and reviewed the minutes from the April 17th regular meeting of the PSVS committee. The chair will entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Dewey, a second by Mr. Harmon. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, the motion carries by voice vote. We don't have any deferred business. I will note the arrival of Member Madland. Let's move on to new business. Item 5A, fiscal year 25-26 recommended budget. I'll defer to Mr. Clegg to commence with these presentations.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair. We're going to jump in pretty quickly to our presentations so that you've got the information and we leave a fair amount of time for you to discuss. Just want to reflect really quickly. Actually, City Clerk, if you could pull up the one graph that was provided to you. At our last meeting, I was providing some staffing numbers that was a little bit from memory off the cuff and got some of those not fully accurately, so we sent that out to the committee by email so that you could see those position counts. Also, for what it's worth, we just wanted to put together this graph. Member Dewey had also requested that we reflect, where are the percentages by department or function. There's also additional information. Member Dewey just requested, sort of what have the expenditures around PSV has been historically. We're working on compiling that information, a little more information than that, but we could at least for this current fiscal year budget, we could show what percentages of the dollars, because positions don't always follow the same percentages of the dollars, because some positions cost more than other positions. And so this is just to reflect for the committee that 40% of the budget is towards police. The next largest chunks are actually our parks and our code. And our code enforcement is actually, so when you see development services is our rapid response teams. These are all of our homeless response teams. And parks, there's a few parks employees, but the majority is our park rangers program. And so if you, depending on how we define public safety, we do have our largest chunks of the budget supporting our homeless cleanup teams, police and fire, and park rangers. But there are two large chunks that I would note. Economic development is a big chunk there, and that's both, we created an economic development department, and there's some staff in there, as well as we're funding contracts or services there. And then the other is for interfund transfers. And what the interfund transfers means is that's how much we're sending to CIP or sending to the general fund. So this is just, I think, responsive to the request to see a percentage breakdown of those that's similar to the position counts we sent out by email, but a little bit different piece of information for you. With that, we will now turn to our fire department and ask them to present on the items that you have that were in the memo that you received last week.
Good morning, committee. Pleasure to present the 2025 PSVS budget for you. I know we have a couple newer members, so I want to take a brief opportunity just to give you an overview of our department and then present a couple projects that we have for the fire department. So the Bakersfield Fire Department, the mission of the Bakersfield Fire Department is to protect, engage, and inspire a safe community through all hazard response and community risk reduction while delivering legendary customer service. And this is something we take very serious. The Bakersfield Fire Department is an all-risk department, which means if an incident doesn't relate to law enforcement, the Bakersfield Fire Department is the one who responds to it. We are very capable of handling a wide scope of incidents. Last year, we responded to nearly 50,000 incidents. We also are typed by the State Office of Emergency Services for a Type 1 hazmat team, a USAR regional task force, a swiftwater rescue team. And those teams over the past 3 or 4 years have been deployed throughout the California and Western United States multiple times for disasters. We also provide advanced life support through some of our apparatus, state response to wildland fires throughout the Western United States, and then of course our prevention and inspection services. Some of our accomplishments last year were completion of our annual report. We graduated 9 firefighters throughout our academy. We had some department-wide infrastructure improvements, 2 of those being Station 1 and a Station 9 kitchen remodel. We implemented a new reporting system which is much more robust in pulling data out and being able to analyze our deployments. We implemented fire service fees. We deployed a ALS rescue to Fire Station 1 downtown here. A public safety open house, which we are actually conducting another one on May 3rd. And we deployed to multiple fires throughout the Western United States, California, Washington, Idaho, all over. We all know about the catastrophe down south with the Palisades and the Eaton fire. We responded multiple engines down to those fires and also deployed our Urban Search and Rescue Regional Task Force, which was responsible for searching those impacted neighborhoods, looking for any trapped occupants. We also implemented an EMS bike team, which is crucial for some of our large events. Bakersfield Marathon, parades that we have in the city to make sure that we can provide medical services and have access to those people who are attending those. So our goals for this year look similar to last year. We want to continue to pursue those grant opportunities. We realize the importance of getting those state, federal, and private monies to help increase our services here in the city. Monitor residential and commercial build out. Continue to enhance citywide disaster response preparedness. Some of that revolves around our Swiftwater and our USAR team. Expand the department's paramedic capabilities when we see opportunities for that. Continue to develop the fire department social media sites and getting our message out there and letting everyone know what we do and how we can help them. Implement a wildland urban interface ordinance. Collaborate with mutual aid and automatic aid agencies, and this is something we do on a regular basis. We have multiple members of the fire department who are members of incident management teams, both state and federal teams. We also work with the Office of Emergency Services on a regular basis. defining our deployments, and seeing how we can help the state. Secure funding to launch processes and updating the emergency operations plan, and then updating the Kern County Op Area Disaster Response Mutual Aid Agreement. And this is something that is a county-wide document that we work with Kern County Fire also. And there's some funding attached to making sure that that is completed and accurate. This is a visual representation of what PSVS has done for our departments over the past years. PSVS funds 27 positions in the Bakersfield Fire Department, anywhere from battalion chiefs to captains, firefighters. It has also purchased a fire engine for the department. This is a representation of the proposed funding. We'll see an increase of $328,000. Most of that increase is salaries and benefits and internal rates. So the capital improvement projects that I mentioned earlier. We do have 5 capital improvement projects that we would like to submit for consideration to the PSVS committee. All these products are fairly critical for the operation of the department. First 2 are generators, fire station generators, or backup generators to make sure that if the power goes out, our stations can still operate. Apparatus doors can still open, and we can still respond out. We can still operate the station at a normal capacity. Currently, 2 of those generators have a transfer switch that is not operating. The generators operate, but when the power goes out, we're unable to get the power to the station because of the transfer switch. Fire Station 4, we have a sewer line repair that needs to be done. A sewer line is actually broke underneath the station. It's going to require a significant amount of work. We're going to have to cut the foundation and do some repairs there. Fire Station 3 has a roof replacement, significant portion, and it's not a full roof, just a partial roof replacement that we need to do, re-roof. Every time it rains, as expected, we get some leakage into the station. And then Fire Station 11 has a occlusion in one of the sewer pipes that needs to be resolved. A total capital improvement project for $177,000. And short and sweet, with that, do you have any questions?
Committee Member Abernathy.
I don't know how it operates, but when you go to around the country to other fires, when you go to LA, is 100% of the cost covered by those entities, or are we paying that? And then do you leave, are those fire men, were they working here today, but then they go and leave it? Or I don't imagine it's that way, and I'm just ignorant about it.
No, great question, because that is a common question that a lot of people have. So here in California, there are a couple ways that we provide mutual aid. The first one is through the California Fire Assistance Authority, which is called CFAA. And that is the most common way we respond to these large incidents. And that is done through the Office of Emergency Services. And the Office of Emergency Services will actually deploy our resources, and it's 100% reimbursement. So that will pay for all the personnel there. There's actually a daily rate for the apparatus that goes. They reimbursed us for fuel. If there's food on the way, we commonly get reimbursed for that. If there's some sort of lodging associated with it, the city will get reimbursed for that also. So that is the most common way that we deploy. And what happens is once the incident is over, some documentation is filled out, it's sent up to the state, and then usually within 3 or 4 months, we get reimbursement from the state for those services. Okay. Now, it does take a couple months to get reimbursed, but it is commonly a 100% reimbursement rate. The backfill also is covered. So the question you had on, do we take people out of the station? Yeah, it does take personnel. In the Palisades and the Eaton Fire, we had 36 firefighters deployed down south. There was 5 engines in our USAR task force, and we combined our USAR task force with the county fire department. So all those people were being paid for, and then their reimbursement, who were backfilling those positions, were also getting reimbursed for.
Okay, and then my only other question is, had this sales tax initiative not passed, which it barely did, out of 200,000 votes, 93, how would you have repaired your bathroom and roof? Where would you have gotten the money?
I don't know. I would have worked with the finance director to see if there were some savings somewhere, or see if we could locate any additional funding. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Vice Chair Campbell.
Good morning.
Morning.
Do you know offhand approximately what your department's entire budget was for the last fiscal year?
Right around 65 million,
And what about for this fiscal year?
70 million.
Do you know what portion of that budget is from PSVS money and what portion is from the general fund?
Certainly, about 7 million is from PSVS money, so right around 10% of it. We have another, the other majority comes from the general fund, and we have a small amount around, right around 2 million that comes from our CUPA, which is our Certified Unified, our prevention and inspection services. That's more of an enterprise type fund because it's a fee for service.
Okay, thank you. Now, you have various facilities throughout the city. I know you have at least 11 fire stations. I don't know how many you have total.
14 fire stations. And then we also have a training division, and then we have an office for our fire investigations unit.
So of those 14 fire stations, obviously they weren't all built at the same time,
No.
right? They're added as the department grew, as the city's needs grew, correct?
Correct. Yes.
All right, so there's kind of a maintenance schedule that we could anticipate when we build a building of any kind, right?
Yes.
And just like when you buy a fire engine or another vehicle, you know, at a certain point, you need to change the oil, you need to change the tires, you need to make sure the gaskets and the pumping apparatus are all in proper working order, right? These kind of things that you can anticipate.
To a certain extent, yes.
Okay, now when it comes to maintaining a building, aren't there also maintenance priorities that we can anticipate and build into a budget for planning purposes?
So we do some of that for sure. We regularly schedule things like remodels. Last fiscal year, we did 2 kitchen remodels. We have a bathroom remodel in process right now. We do schedule roof repairs. We actually have a 5-year CIP plan that we look at scheduling stuff further out and anticipating that we are going to have some issues, or we're meeting the lifetime of certain things in the facility.
So I guess you can probably see where I'm going with this, is that we have all these proposals here for PSVS money for these, what should be kind of easily anticipated maintenance. And so my question for you is, why is it that this year, because I don't recall in previous years having these kinds of requests for maybe easily anticipated maintenance and repair items
Yeah.
from PSVS money. So is there, and especially since your budget increased by, what, 7 or 8% since last year? So why is it that the request is from PSVS this time?
So great question. Some of these are somewhat unforeseeable. For instance, sewers and things like that, that's not something that we plan to just replace on a yearly basis. Station 4 is a fairly old station. A lot of the pipes in Station 4 are actually clay pipes underground. So either through settling or erosion or some unknown to me, that pipe has actually fractured and is now actually leaking. The Station 11, there is an occlusion in the sewer line that is actually not allowing portions of sewage to get past it. The Station 3 roof, I would have to get a little more information on that. I believe that we work pretty closely with General Services and Public Works as far as some of the scheduling of that stuff. But the Station 3, it's not a full portion of the roof. It's actually a one small portion of the roof, that the flat portion that has actually started leaking. So it's not the whole roof, and we're only planning to repair that small portion of the roof.
The increase in the budget over last fiscal year, what is that money mostly allocated toward? Is that like,
Salaries, benefits, and internal rates. Yeah, so internal rates would be like TS, fleet rates, workman's comp, insurance, and then salaries and benefits that are associated with COLA raises from previous year contracts.
okay, and those are, obviously those are anticipated because they're
Those are
part of
anticipated, yeah.
union agreements and that.
Yeah.
So I guess this goes back to Ms. Abernathy's question, you know, if we didn't have the PSVS fund to go and repair the roof or the sewer, I mean, it seems like that might be something that we would want to squeeze into that extra $5 million that the city allocated to the budget. So was there some kind of accounting that had to be done so you could find some things that could be maybe categorized as a PSVS priority?
That's, we had, I think like any department, there's a lot of projects that we would like to do. There's a lot of projects out there that we would like to accomplish in the next year, but we realized the impact of the budget. We realized the fiscal situation that we're in. So the projects that we did submit to the committee were only critical projects that we felt that had to be done in this next fiscal year. Just recently, we had a power outage at one of the stations, and it was actually one of our other fire stations, our only fire station that doesn't have a backup generator, that caused some short-term issues. So we recognize this as one of our vulnerabilities and one of our weaknesses, and this is the process to resolving those issues.
Okay, my last question is this.
Yeah.
Were you given any kind of guidance from management about maybe what types of things you might want to categorize as PSVS priorities so you could request that money, and other things that you could kind of leave in the general fund so you wouldn't have to come to this committee with them?
Well, I think like any department head, we work on a regular basis with city management and all the directors to making sure that we're making the appropriate decisions for where any of the funding is going. It's important to us that we're fiscally responsible, hence the projects that we submitted, and making sure that any of those projects that are submitted are critical, and then that they're submitted to the appropriate place.
All right, thank you.
Committee Member Avery, and then Committee
Just
Member
a,
Matland.
hopefully an easy question. Mine's mainly about people. You know,
Yes, sir.
staffing levels, where you're at with staffing levels, open positions, fully staffed,
Yeah.
how you are meeting standards comparable to other locations.
Yeah, great question. We actually are running an academy right now with 11 firefighters in it. We are in the process of conducting an engineer's exam. We also just finished up a battalion chief's exam, and we're hoping sometime over the next couple months to be able to, well, the academy is going to graduate in August, but by August that we're going to be up to full staff, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 vacancies at the firefighter level. I will say that our staffing has not affected how we respond in the city. We're still providing every service that we would provide, and our firefighters are dedicated to the community and dedicated to providing great service.
Committee Member Matland, you had questions? Yeah.
Hi, good morning. Good afternoon. I do want to comment on your quotes for your repairs are actually, well, much better than some of the estimates we see come through here on what I feel are, you know, not Safety and Vital Services, so whoever you're quoting with, your numbers look great.
We actually have a
Thank you.
battalion chief in charge of facilities right now that has some experience in construction, so,
You can tell,
yeah.
because some of the other numbers that come through here are so exorbitant and out of line. And then, since this is Safety and Vital Services, after the travesty in Southern California, is my concern for more money from the city, wherever it comes from. Because, you know, at one point, we are going to have our catastrophic event here or nearby. So how's that looking?
I will say, Bakersfield Fire Department is prepared, and we're always looking into the future to better ourselves. As you saw in there, we're working on updating our emergency operations plan. We are very familiar with working in the state system as far as not just us handling catastrophe, but bringing additional resources in. Bakersfield, the state of California is very good at disasters because we have so many resources so close. Down in LA, there were engines from all over California, Seattle, Canada, Texas, Atlanta, and if we had a large incident like that here, it would be the same. And one of the reasons it would be the same is because we are very familiar with working within the system and working with the Office of Emergency Services and the federal side also. So we are prepared. Can we get better? Of course. I think any leader of an organization who doesn't think they can get better is fooling themselves. So we always looking to see what else we can do to get better. Sometimes they're big steps, sometimes they're little steps, but we're always looking to improve.
Thank you.
Committee Member Harmon.
Yes, thank you. Just one question regarding the general fund allocation, the proposed budget. What percentage or what amount of that is allocated for capital improvements besides this 177,000?
I don't believe we have any capital improvements in the general fund.
Okay. Thank you.
Well,
Any other questions from my colleagues? All right. Thank you, Chief.
thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We'll now invite Public Works to present next.
Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Zach Meyer, the Public Works Director for the City of Bakersfield. I did want to introduce some of my staff. Behind me, I have Paul Archer and Luis Topete, Navdeep Graywall, and Karen Claiborne. They were very instrumental in helping prepare this presentation and overall facilitate some of the projects and priorities that we administer as a department that come with the funding that we receive from PSVS. So just a quick overview of the presentation. I would like to highlight some of the priorities and goals of both the priorities of PSVS and the goals we have set before us by our City Council. Highlight some of our larger projects and accomplishments that are underway for the current fiscal year, what we're proposing for projects that we're requesting PSVS dollars for fiscal year 25-26, and then open it up for questions and comments. So a quick recap. Of course, PSVS highlights public safety, keeping public areas safe and clean, enhancing amenities throughout the community to improve the quality of life and attract visitors, and enhancing neighborhoods. So what we do in Public Works, where we look for funding, is when we're trying to improve the roadways that could enhance pedestrian safety, bicycling safety. So usually the projects we ask funding for really emphasize and highlight those areas. And with our City Council goals, our projects typically relate to economic opportunity for all, safety and resilience, reliable infrastructure, community character and quality of life, and innovative and efficient government. So now I'd like to talk about 4 projects that have used PSVS funding. One that's currently underway is our Mesa Marin Phase 3 construction. This is a park that will be managed by the Parks Department, but Public Works is administering the construction of the phase. So the main accomplishment of this facility is to add 4 additional softball fields, enhance lighting, landscaping, walkways, pathways, concession stands, and restroom, and make this a regional softball or a regional park for softball. This project is about 75% complete construction. We anticipate it being fully completed in the fall of this year. And so far, about $1 million has been allocated to this project of PSVS funds. Another one I'd like to highlight is our multi-use path Friant Kern Canal project. So this will put a multi-use path within the canal area. That's 6 miles. That'll go from 7 Standard Road all the way to Kern River Parkway, right around where Coffee Road and Truxton Avenue, where the parkway intersects in that area. That's about the distance of the project. So again, the idea is enhancing this bike path to allow people on bikes and other means of transportation to have a safe area to commute from point A to point B. And so far, about $2.6 million of PSVS dollars have been allocated to this project. This is a 2-year project. Construction-wise, we did issue a notice to proceed in January of this year. We're looking late 2026, early 2027 for completion of this project. Another one is we do have a couple of projects where dollars are assigned for resurfacing and traffic calming. These are things that are administered by our in-house operations and our street staff. So a couple things that we typically do are speed humps. So one of those pictures is at Las Entradas, where we get requests for speed humps and we assess those and administer those on a as-needed basis. Also, a multi-use path on Weibel Road from Berkshire to Panama Lane, there wasn't a sidewalk in that area, so we enhanced it for better pedestrian safety. And then we also focus some of these traffic calming and speed reduction techniques in and around schools. So enhancing the traffic painting, and this example is around William Penn Elementary School. So between our resurfacing and traffic calming projects, there's a total of about $1.9 million of PSVS funds that have been allocated to the Streets Division this year. Last one I'd like to highlight is our Garces Memorial Circle enhancement. We tried to clean up the roundabout to be more clear and direct in terms of how cars go from point A to point B, but also making it much safer for bike and ped, landing areas around the roundabout. Cyclists can access these. They can elect to use the circle like a car, but if they feel safer, there's sufficient width in the landings and the sidewalks that we built out around the circle. This was done in coordination with Caltrans, so it was partially state funded, but $820,000 of PSVS funds have been spent to date on this project. It's about 90% complete. There's some landscaping work that needs to be done, but the circle is paved, the concrete's there, and it's operational right now. So to transition into 25, 26 proposed projects, I'd like to highlight 4 requests. The first one is recommended. Projects 2 through 4, these are optional that we may be able to do given if we have the funds available to do it. The first one is a Bakersfield Police Headquarters flooding mitigation project. I'll talk about that more on the next slide. And the other 3 projects all relate to street enhancement, safety, and a project around a school. So the first one is there's a a couple exits at our BPD facility where when there's rain events that are a little above moderate, we do see some flooding in the building. Staff has assessed it and has some solutions where it could be correcting the drainage issues or maybe even requiring some awnings for coverage to keep these areas drier. But staff's anticipating about $60,000 to make all the improvements to eliminate some of these water and drainage issues that we see at the building when we have rain events. The next one is an ongoing project. This is 18th and 19th Street enhancements. The whole section that we're currently trying to design goes all the way from Mill Creek to F Street, I believe. But right now we're focusing on one of the segments from L Street to O Street, looking at 18th and 19th, enhancing the traffic striping, making more accessible for bikes, adding the buffers. And some of the streets, cleaning up the sidewalks to and to beautify those two corridors. So we do have this as a three-phase approach. This current phase is at about 95% complete design, and we've anticipated we need about $4 million more to fully fund this project. We do have CMAQ dollars that help fund it since it is has a biking element to it. But based on our current funding and what we believe we need to fully construct this first phase, staff is requesting $4 million of PSPS dollars. The next project is H Street, which is another. It's a large. This project's larger. Runs from almost to where 58 is, going all the way north to Golden State. Some of the features, again, enhancing the striping, making room for a bike path or a better bike path to enhance bicycle safety. And a lot of the areas there would be a lane reduction to allow for the bike path, but we will keep at its current lane widths or lane sizes at some of the more congested intersections like at California and at 58. But again, the goal is to enhance safety for bike and ped along this stretch. Again, similar to the last project, this is about 95% design, so we're really close to getting this project ready to go out to bid. But based on current estimates and what we programmed from last year to this year, we're identifying a shortfall of $3 million. So staff is requesting an additional $3 million of PSVS funds so we could fully construct this project. Last request is $200,000 that we would like to do some enhancements at Jefferson Elementary School. We have made some enhancements in this area for speed humps, and I believe we also added a stop sign in this area. But what's unique about this elementary school, and why we're highlighting it, is it's right across the street from an on-ramp to 178. So you see a lot more traffic in this area. Cars tend to go a little faster in this area, and we want to make it safer for students to go to the school. We've done assessments and had staff on site to count number of students and parents that are crossing in this area. We would have to coordinate with Caltrans, so this $200,000 is really for design efforts, but we're looking to enhance that intersection there at Beale Avenue to put in a traffic signal there, because there are some kids that try to cross at Beale, which is very busy, and possibly working with Caltrans if we could potentially close that off-ramp at 178 and turn that area into a cul-de-sac. Again, with safety being in mind for the parents and students in this area that walk there. With that, that concludes our presentation. I do have staff with me available and ready to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. I have some questions. First off, on the H Street project. So I would like to actually understand in terms of, you know, our roles, public safety and vital services. So I'm mindful of the fact that we do not have line of sight or authority over all the transportation planning of the city. But I would like to understand why the city is thinking about funding, reducing lane sizes when we have just now connected 58 to H Street, and it's becoming a main corridor to bring people into downtown. How is reducing the ability to get that vehicular traffic through H Street and into downtown going to be a positive for your constituents and the folks that we're supposed to represent?
So we do assess all the roads when we make these types of changes. We've done similar things on Union Avenue where we've taken away a lane. We did this at Buena Vista where we took away a lane.
I would not really point to either of those as resounding successes in terms of either traffic flow or receptiveness from the community.
I believe there's a mixed bag of opinions on those.
I think that we have a unanimous opinion up here. And I think that, and I respect the council, and I do respect the fact that I'm probably a bit in conflict with the person that appointed me to this body. But I will tell you, the only feedback that I can imagine that you have received is negative. And I would be I don't think I could vote for more traffic calming in terms of an appropriate use of PSVS funds, because I do not believe that that's what the community wants. That may be what its leaders want to do. That may be a great way to chase some grant funds, but I don't think it's what the community wants. Sorry to be that direct.
No, I understand. And I would just add, when we look, at least when I look at H Street and Union and Niles and Monterey, where we're doing these things, when you go out in those areas at specific times in the day, I do see a lot of bike and ped, more so in those areas than other areas in the city. People do rely on that to be able to have those other modes of transportation in those areas. So when I drive it, I see it. We're trying to make it more accommodating for all aspects of transportation. We do learn as we do these things, and that's why I wanted to highlight around where 58 is, or California is, right where BHS is. We don't want to take away a lane there. We want to make sure that through those we already know some of these areas are congested, and we don't want to make that worse, but then we're trying to still accommodate the other individuals in the city that do rely on walking and do rely on bike.
Then I think I would look at a more holistic option than really, I mean, this is going to increase congestion on H. This is not going to increase flow. This is going to increase congestion. That is the only result of this. And you are going to disadvantage people who this city just spent $1 billion building a transportation facility to facilitate bringing them east to west and dropping them downtown at that place. And we're now going to restrict the flow of traffic there? I'm sorry. I just don't understand the concept there. But getting back to the traffic calming things, a couple of points. One, where you are talking about continuing it in downtown 18th, 19th Street, that seems like a totally appropriate use to me. That seems like exactly where that needs to go. The second thing is, I think I'm a pretty astute person. I think I follow the laws. I think I try to comply. I will tell you one of the reasons that those of us, it's not just the lanes, I do not know what to do on the roads when I see those green patches. I do not know what is legal and what is illegal. I am likely violating the law on a daily basis. Chief Terry, please tell your officers at Ming and Allen to not flag the gray Honda Ridgeline, because I'm sorry, ignorance is my only defense. I do not know what I'm doing. So if this is going to be the goal of the city, then we're going to have to figure out a way to educate the populace about how to use these traffic calming features. And I will get off my soapbox.
No, thank you for that feedback.
Vice Chair Campbell.
To dovetail on that illustration, you go over the bridge on Union to get on the 178, the lane suddenly ends and a bike lane begins. Yesterday I was trying to get on the 178 there, and a car in front of me realized, oh wait, there's a bunch of green stripes here. I don't think I'm supposed to be here. So he swerved into the next lane, cutting somebody else off, and then about 20 feet later came back when the the exit lane began. And I don't know how much money we spent to create this hazard, but it is a hazard. And I agree. I think of city government or county government kind of like the officials in a sporting event with a slightly different role. But when you notice the officials, it's only when they're doing a bad job. And so we saw in Los Angeles with this disaster of a fire that the city officials down there had done a bad job of planning for something of that magnitude. And it required people like our fire department and fire departments from all over the state and country to go help them. And it's still a massive disaster. And everybody noticed. And then our own city government has this increase in fees for the sewer that's been very contentious. So you draw attention to the city government when a bad job is being done. And I think that this creating traffic jams, when calling it traffic calming, when you really are enraging the drivers, it's traffic enraging in my view. That is a good way to draw attention and scrutiny to the city operations. What are we doing here? We should be doing things that make it easy and actually are accomplishing the fundamental objectives of the city. What is the purpose of the city government? Primarily public safety, roads, creating economic conditions where people can flourish in a free economy, not taking money from people and spending it on traffic jams, which is really what we're doing with this so-called traffic calming. So I would agree wholeheartedly with the chairman's comments there, and I don't really have a question. That's my feedback for you.
And I'm sorry, I got to dive in here one more time here. Okay, H Street and 58. What does the model say needs to be improved there in order to facilitate traffic moving? What improvements are in the transportation development fee model that need to be created? I don't think this is one of them. And so when I think about kind of first principles, the work that's done at the city, you guys have a circulation element. You guys have a transportation development fee program with a list of improvements. I know we got to be opportunistic and chase, dollars where they're available. Let's work on that list. Let's not create problems for the constituents. Sorry, I return to my other colleagues. I'll officially off my soapbox.
Yeah, my question is, this is relatively new, the whole green paint thing and cutting down lanes. Who came up with this? Where is this such a success? I'm guessing the University of Minnesota or Wisconsin. But who is it that made you guys think you should start doing this?
So again, when we look at trying to make these enhancements, these improvements, the green paint is, what some of the California standards are and what's allowed in the MUTCD. And so again, trying to enhance the visibility, making drivers more aware that this area is for a bike lane, and our priorities have been to make the road more accessible and usable for cyclists, and the green paint helps accomplish that.
Yeah, you're doing a lot of paths. I know there's one council member into bike paths, but honestly, the roads, the pavements in this town are so bad to be spending so much money on hoping we're going to get massive numbers of bike riders headed downtown. I think it's just foolish, and the public does not agree with this. I'm sorry.
Just another
Vice Chair
observation.
Campbell.
Can we stop calling them improvements and just call them modifications? I mean, it seems like we're kind of painting with an optimistic brush here to call it an improvement. That's it. Thank you.
And I will thank you very much for taking. Okay, but Committee Member Madeline, sorry.
Here we go again. Yeah, the green things, I mean, I can fit one of my big trucks in that thing. And I mean, you could put three-wheel bikes side by side. And I don't know how to drive them either. And Garza Circle, I drove it before it was done, and I drive it now. There is absolutely no difference in it. Period, all day long, whether you have a truck and a trailer or a car. And I drive it multiple times a day. During high traffic times, low traffic times, there aren't that many pedestrians, really. And, it looks good, the paint looks good, should have been done by community or something. but it was a lot of money that I'm telling you, I drive it all the time. Absolutely no difference. And I'm sure it was an exorbitant amount of money. And we all have our own little part of town or whatever, but we're kind of covering the entire city. You know, from east to west. The green stuff just is baffling because no one knows how to drive it. Sorry about that, but
No, I appreciate your guys' feedback.
it's the fact, you know, we're not members of any city council or supervisors, but we drive it, we walk it. I got rid of my bike a long time ago because I'd fall off now. But thank you, and I'm sorry you're taking so much heat, but you know, facts are facts.
No, I know what I signed up for, so it's
I
okay.
know, exactly. And I will say that, you know, a lot of these decisions and a lot of these projects happened when you were not the Public Works Director. So we all in the department, not the director. So we appreciate you taking the arrows. I think, you know, maybe as in an effort for compromise or in an effort for, you know, kind of getting where we want to go is, you have a great communications department. An explainer video of how to use the lanes would go a long way for some of us.
Don't spend any more money.
And that would have been my comment is I feel this committee is very glued into the community and the better information and communication we could share in terms of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how to navigate through these areas. And we do community outreach too on these larger projects. So we did 3 town halls for 8th Street. We are trying to engage the community, but we can do a better job.
Oh, committee member Herman, sorry.
Yeah, I share the concerns about reducing a lane, but my question specifically is, how does this corridor modification, we'll call it for the rest of my committee members, to 8th Street help Bakersfield realize its future status as a station city, which I appreciate is in quotes in the report, and when can we expect this station city to be realized?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, in the report we got with the explanation of the project, it says, I'll just read the sentence, the project will address the history and traditions of Bakersfield, as well as its continued future as a transportation hub with the construction of the statewide high-speed rail system and Bakersfield's status as a future, quote-unquote, station city.
Station city. Can you speak to that? Can you speak to that?
Yeah,
Are we expecting bikes to go to the station, or I don't get the...
Apologize. I want to have our lead engineer on the project speak to that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, committee members. Paul Archer, Public Works Department. So currently, High Speed Rail is working to install additional rail from north, obviously, to Bakersfield. They're working on the development of their high-speed rail station, and their intent is to redevelop that entire site at F Street and Golden State to provide additional commercial properties up there. There's obviously new apartments and residential properties to the south of Golden State, but their vision for the high-speed rail station is to be much more than just a train station. It's to be dramatically improved with economic development opportunities and businesses to be in that area. So the intent of us doing a lot of these projects along 8th Street, along 18th, 19th, in the downtown core is to provide the ability for increased pedestrian traffic, for bicyclists and people to get around the downtown core if they don't have a vehicle safer. So that is really the intent, is for us to prepare for things like the high-speed rail and for a higher density of residential in the downtown core. So that is really, when we look at future investments and future planning, that is really what we're looking to do as a Public Works Department.
Okay, thank you.
You know, I can appreciate what you're trying to do here, but these streets were originally designed for motor traffic, vehicle traffic, way back before all these calming features and bike lanes were even introduced into our standards, let's say. So trying to convert our already congested streets into these bike and pedestrian lanes, you got to find a better way to do it. Either you got to designate or take property or do something, but other than use the streets that were originally designed for motor traffic. To me, that's just my comment.
And again, I would just say, and I will officially get off my high horse, but I won't, but I'll promise to, and then I'll contradict myself. But I would just say I really appreciate that we live in a city that is as forward-thinking, that has vision, that wants to take advantage and wants to position itself for what's next. But at the end of the day, I think we really need to be thinking when we think about our transportation infrastructure, about the $1 billion improvement that we just did, that we have, that's real, versus the potential one that we don't know if is ever going to happen. And with that, I think we've beat this horse to death. And let's move on to our next presentation.
I welcome moving on, Chair, but I do think it would be appropriate as we move forward at the end to the deliberation and determinations of the committee. If you want to note for the record a particular piece of feedback to the City Council on behalf of the committee, I believe that would be appropriate.
I can't make a motion.
No, I'm suggesting that as an item to take up in a moment.
I was going to, offer something to my colleagues that, again, being mindful of our role, that we do not believe that traffic calming should be funded by PSVS dollars. I agree, but mindful of our role.
Okay, thank you. I anticipate.
First,
You would have to make the motion because
I'll
I'm the
make
chair. I can't.
repeat that motion. We don't believe this is a service that the PSVS and the voters especially were anticipating when they barely voted for it.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, you let me know when you're ready to call the question.
Vote has been opened. Please cast your vote electronically.
Let's-
Which button is that here?
It's the agenda.
Agenda.
Oh,
So we're saying that. So just to be clear, for the motion is that we would say that we believe traffic calming is not a good use of PSVS dollars. If you press agenda.
Yes. That's a yes vote.
Yes
Support
is
it?
not a good use.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
That's a yes vote to support that
We're
point.
we're
Exactly.
supporting the motion.
Yes.
I'd rather vote.
Yeah, exactly.
Motion is unanimously approved.
You only do it a couple times a year. All right. All right. So that was
That was Public Works, and we now have Parks as our final
Awesome.
department up for presentations.
excellent. Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Raj Mistry. I'm the Fiscal and Administrative Services Officer for Recreation and Parks Department. Along with me, I have some staff members I'd like to recognize that are attending. We got Billy Owens, our Park Ranger Manager. We have Fidel Gonzalez, our Parks Construction and Facilities Planner. Keith Howell, our Park Superintendent. And Clarissa Garcia, our Operations Support Specialist. Let me begin with some of the priorities that the Recreation and Parks likes to fulfill for the Public Safety and Vital Services measure. We like to keep some of the three priorities that we qualify for are keeping public areas safe and clean, enhancing amenities throughout the community to improve the quality of life and attract visitors, and enhancing neighborhoods through additional code enforcement and improved park maintenance. For fiscal year 25-26, we have, here's our list of our projects. We have a total of 5 projects. 2 of them are recommended by the city manager's office and 3 are optional depending on budget availability. Total for the 5 projects is $2.6 million approximately. Let me go down the list of the projects. The first one, park amenities and renovation improvements, we like to call PARI. This is a continuation of an existing project. It provides much needed repairs to our park system. This includes security gates, drinking fountains, picnic tables, park benches, shade structures, and any other park amenities at our related parks. The Wilson Park Sports Renovation Project. That one is for the basketball and tennis courts at the park, which are original to the construction of the park, which was made in 1960 approximately. Over time, the concrete has cracked and alkaline corrosion has basically deteriorated the playing surface. So the project would completely remove the existing slab structures and replace it with a post-tension slab. Now, with regards to the Wilson Park Playground, that was actually completed, the renovation, about 3 to 4 years ago when PSVS was first implemented. So that's a new playground there at the park. The remaining 3 projects are optional. The Anton Giovanni Park, that is a 15-acre park site located near Mountain Ridge in Berkshire. We currently have funds for the current design, which it is in a design process. These additional funding will provide utility connections to the park, which includes water and electricity. The Centennial Park improvements, the playground at that particular park is over 24 years old, and so it's past its usefulness. The playground would be removed and replaced with the new playground equipment. And the new playgrounds will have rubberized surfacing, ADA accessibility, and inclusive elements. And finally, the design for undeveloped parkland and parcels. The city of Bakersfield, we currently have about 9 undeveloped park sites identified in our master plan that was completed. The master plan was for the Recreation and Parks Department. And the projects require a phased approach for design, for planning and design, to get the projects shovel-ready. So in the future, when we have construction dollars, the park site is ready to go. This request will fulfill for 1 additional park design. Now, the next few slides are just the accomplishments that we made in the fiscal year 24-25. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to mention a couple of them. We got a new pocket park. Fitness equipment has been installed. At various parks, we have new security gates. If you notice, the yellow security gates are parks. I do like to send out kudos to the park rangers and Storm, because they were the ones that primarily handle those installations of those, and fabrication of it for the most part. We replaced quite a few drinking fountains. I think last count at 17 different park sites, we added new drinking fountains or replaced existing ones. And right here, these are good before and after pictures of when it comes to some of the PARI money that's used. The park pour-in-place repairs are the rubberized surfacing. As you can tell, over time it develops cracks, or just the heat gets to the material, and we like to replace that because it's a safety issue really for the children when they're coming down the slides and playing in the area. There's another example at Weston Park. There's cracks in areas of the rubberized surface that have been removed. That just gets removed over time. This is an example at University Park. We did some ADA and sidewalk improvements. Prior to this project, all the playground, the picnic areas, all the other amenities, they weren't really connected or ADA accessible. This may allow for ADA access within the park. Another example here at Mason Wren, the pickleball and basketball court resurfacing. The heat here in Bakersfield, especially the summer heat, just pretty much kills the playing surface, the thick layer of a specific epoxy paint they use. So every 4 to 5 years, they have to be replaced. With that, it's a short presentation. For questions, I'm here and along with my staff for any questions or comments.
All right. Questions from my colleagues? Okay, all right. You got out easy. I think this is one of the most visible things that the public sees from PSVS. And so between park rangers, between the improvements, between the security and the lighting, kudos. Thank you.
Members of the committee, at this point, it is time for your deliberation and consideration. As in prior years, we're not trying to suggest that the committee has to take up these topics in the buckets that we've organized, but we just tried to put them into buckets that made sense, at least to us. And that was in the same buckets as you were presented today. And so we have a slide that has the, thank you, City Clerk. We have a slide that has the fire-related projects. We have a slide that has the public works-related projects, and we have a slide that has the parks-related projects. Just to clarify something that I shared at our last meeting, and you might have heard in some of the comments of members today, we don't expect all of these projects to be approved by the city council. That's different than in prior years where we're telling council, you have a limited amount of capital improvement project dollars, and you're gonna have to make some choices. They're gonna pick some and not others. There's a handful that we recommended as, you know, ones that the staff believes should be in the budget, but ultimately also city council call. But if the committee wants to break these up into smaller subsets, you're welcome to, but we can, and if you would like to start with one of the others, I can forward and back the slides, but we have first up the fire department projects.
All right. I will turn to my colleagues. Does anyone have strong feelings about this one?
I'd like to make a comment.
Yeah, go for it.
I think we all saw with the Los Angeles fires a significant lack of preparation by the Los Angeles Fire Department. And in the weeks following, there was a lot of public commentary from various political talking heads and also experts in the field. One in particular that I heard was a fire expert discussing the San Francisco Fire Department and how well prepared they are for a catastrophe after the, what was it, the 1908 or 1906 earthquake, which resulted in a large fire. And I was very impressed with the San Francisco Fire Department's preparation, and it made me wonder for the first time what our fire department is doing when it comes to planning ahead. So the tone of my questions perhaps was a little critical and wondering why would we not plan for these kinds of things, and viewing this most, maybe charitably is the wrong word, but just giving the benefit of the doubt to our fire department. Perhaps this is part of a self-reflection after seeing one of our sister cities in the state of California suffering such a catastrophe that to some extent could have been prevented by better planning. And so with that, from that standpoint, I would move that we would find that these items are within the priorities outlined in the PSVS ordinance, and they're consistent with the city's intent when the voters passed this ordinance and imposed the 1% sales tax increase.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion by Vice Chair Campbell and a second by Committee Member Harmon. Is there any further discussion from my colleagues? All right. Madam Clerk, call the question.
Please vote electronically.
We'll be experts by the end of this. All right.
Motion is approved with Committee Member Abernathy abstaining and Committee Member Rojas Mora absent.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next items.
Thank you, committee members. The next is the Public Works item. Again, we will note the motion that was already made, and as a general, I would argue, policy statement, these are still specific projects that we would still request a finding from the committee.
Vice Chair Campbell.
In light of the recent controversy over the sewer project, I know that's not exactly on point, but it ties into my greater point. And the discussions we had last week about what I perceive as a lack of foresight on the part of the city in many departments, I'm somewhat baffled by this apparent extreme confidence in a future high-speed rail coming to downtown Bakersfield. It's almost as, and to hear people speak as though it's this foregone conclusion. Well, we're preparing for the high-speed rail, and we don't know when it'll get here. Maybe it'll be 10 years, maybe it'll be 20 years, maybe it'll never happen. But the people of this city must suffer traffic jams now as we prepare for this great coming of this high-speed rail. It's almost as though we're members of some bizarre cult that believes fervently in a perverse eschatology that the end times will be this great arrival of a train. And everybody else looks at it and says, that train will never get here. But we're spending millions of dollars now to accommodate this train. And at the same time, we're making it more difficult to use our downtown roads for the people that actually use it now, for the things we use downtown for now. So it just strikes me as bizarre. And maybe I'm the one taking crazy pills and nobody else is, but I just, and then we have this budget shortfall, and now we're talking about spending millions more on these projects. So with that preface, I would move that we make a finding that these 4 items are not consistent with the PSVS priorities.
Is there a second? All right. We have a motion by Vice Chair Campbell, second by Committee Member Abernathy, that these 4 items are not consistent with PSVS priorities. Is there any further discussion from my colleagues? Committee Member Harmon?
Yeah, would you consider amending the motion to cover the bottom 3 and then having the police headquarters on its own motion?
Thank you for that point. I, for some reason, thought this was on a previous slide, but I would stipulate to such an amendment with the consent of my colleagues. Well, we'll remove the police headquarters flooding mitigation is on this slide, and that was not intended to be the target of my comments or my motion. So I would, with the consent of my peers, without requiring
Would
another
you
vote.
also agree to that amendment, Committee Member Abernathy?
Okay, it's just, we have this big issue out here, this city's broke, and everything has to be a different attitude about spending for things. And I don't want it to flood in the police headquarters, nobody does, but I don't want the sewage in the streets either. And somebody needs to plan better and with our monies and not spend. So I'm, like 60,000, okay, but that's a lot of money too.
Just to clarify my motion, revising my motion would require us to vote separately on the police headquarters flooding issue. So I'm simply moving that the street corridor improvements and the Jefferson School improvements as listed on this slide would not be consistent with the PSVS priorities, and then we can take up the other matter separately. Would you agree to that?
The three aren't
The 3.
consistent, okay.
Okay. Is that agreeable?
Yes, that's.
Okay,
that was
so
my
what we
point.
will do is we will have a vote on the amended motion, which is for the 2 street corridor improvement projects and the Jefferson School improvements, that those are not consistent with PSVS funding priorities. Any further discussion? All right. Madam Clerk, please call the question.
Please vote electronically.
All right. And I will return to my colleagues for a motion on the police headquarters.
I have a question for
Yes?
Cindy Manager. I don't want to step on your toes.
If I may announce the results.
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Motion is approved with Committee Member Avery voting no and Committee Member Rojas Mora absent.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Vice Chair Campbell.
Mr. Clegg, we did not hear a presentation from the police department regarding this. I know it was mentioned in the Public Works. My questions would have been similar for the police chief regarding the budget and planning for these kind of things. I know we have aging buildings. They're really cool buildings, by the way, but they are aging, and we should be able to anticipate that we need some repairs. So my question is, since you kind of have the master overview of the city budget, why is this something that we're asking for PSVS money for?
As we looked at what funding was available in the general fund, which there's no additional money available in the general fund, there's some limited funding in our capital outlay, which has some funding that comes from our transient occupancy tax. But we identified some of those projects that were what we would consider routine maintenance. We have a couple of other roof repairs and a couple of other very limited, because that budget's also very limited this year. But just for, both programmed, but we even reduced some of our even programmed CIPs and emergency CIPs funded out of our capital outlay fund, but identified some of these more time-sensitive ones that are related to public safety that we felt like were consistent with PSVS.
One question I would have about the overall budget for PSVS. I know when we discussed this last week, there was a certain chunk of, I believe it was about $12 million being moved from the PSVS funds to the general fund to shore up general fund shortfalls. I'm curious why it wasn't, what, $12 million and $60,000 just thrown into the general fund, why we have to consider this separately. What was the point of that?
Good suggestion, Vice Chair. I think as we think about capital, so the PSVS is really supporting operations of the general fund, no capital. And so we were trying to be transparent about any capital projects, but fair point, that could have been another
Just
approach.
to be clear, there are other members that appreciate the transparency and don't want, everything to be a sweep into the general fund.
I don't mean to suggest that Vice Chair would not want transparency. That's been a theme he has discussed prior. That was just our mindset.
Right, I think the term you used last week was you wanted to avoid a shell game where you're shuffling funding from one thing to another so that you could justify using PSVS money, but then at the end, we have this shortfall in the general fund. And it looks like, to me, looking at that budget, we have a surplus from previous years in the PSVS money that is being added to the budget this year, and then so we're spending all we have and more, and then we're taking the rest and putting it in the general fund if the city council chooses to do that. So I just thought it was peculiar that we have these small items that were kind of sprinkled in here. I mean, maybe to give us something to do, I guess.
There's lots of utility in the feedback that's received from this body beyond just having a few things to vote on. No, again, there's very limited resources. We identified capital projects across the board that we thought, were appropriate. And this, I think the small amounts are more reflective of the available budget that we're just not proposing. Now, obviously, you see on the slide a couple of really big projects, and you've already voted on those. But beyond that, we held to a small list of very small projects, because that's all the money we have.
All right. Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Committee Member Dewey, did you have something? Committee Member Matland?
Mine is regarding the train. I've ridden the train back and forth to Sacramento from here for probably more than anyone in the room has for years. The station here is fine, but I've also traveled in Europe and Asia. I've been lucky enough to do that and been on trains. The technology that's proposed and the tracks are outdated at best. And in their, their stations that are there, it looks like JFK on Christmas Eve. And those are the kind of cities and technology, but we are so far from there. I mean, the technology, that train, and there aren't that many people in this train station at this point anyway. So that was my comment on that.
All right. So I don't think we are at resolution here in terms of the police station. So
We don't have a motion.
yeah, returning to my colleagues, is there a motion? All right.
I'll make a motion that we spend the necessary funds for the police headquarters flooding migration.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Committee Member Dewey and a second by Committee Member Avery to fund or to find that the police headquarters flooding mitigation is consistent with the public safety and vital services measure. Madam Clerk, please call the roll, or the question.
Please vote electronically. Motion is approved with Committee Member Abernathy voting no and Committee Member Rojas Mora absent.
Next items, please.
This final slide contains the different park items. It wasn't mentioned in the presentation. I just thought I would add really quickly. This body has seen the park amenities and renovation improvements in prior years. We don't always bring other ongoing items every year, but we've treated this as a one-time each time, and so that's why you see it again in front of you. But again, you can take these as separate or collectively.
As I said in my comments, I very much support these. I think these are very much a representation to the public of these dollars at work. And to the city manager's point, I do recall PARI coming back before and seeing the results of this very minimal amount of dollars going a long way to improve our park systems.
You know, in previous meetings of this committee, I have observed other members give opinions about the utility of certain spending priorities, and I've kind of put myself into a bit more of a strict box as far as, do I see this as something the voters intended to approve, as opposed to, is this a good idea to spend money on? Earlier today, I pulled up a copy of the resolution passed by the city council that established this committee. And in the paragraph where it describes essentially the duties of this committee, it says the committee may prepare recommendations on funding priorities for the measure and present such recommendations to the city council in advance of or during the city's annual budget process. So having read that, I stand corrected. I don't think the role is limited to what I thought it was limited to, and with all apologies to my colleagues whose comments I previously thought were unnecessary or outside the scope of our duties, they were right and I was wrong. I think one interpretation of this, and probably an obvious one, is that part of our role is to make recommendations on the order of priorities. And right now, when the city is suffering from a shortfall of revenue, we're having to tap into money that we saved in previous years of PSVS money. We're using millions of dollars of PSVS money, presumably to patch up shortfalls in the city's budget. We have unanticipated insurance expenses. We have unanticipated labor costs. And we got all these repairs of things that we didn't think about previously. And now we have this, somehow the city's going to have to figure out this sewer infrastructure funding project. It occurs to me that some things, perhaps, even if they are within the scope of the PSVS measure, and I wouldn't say that parks necessarily are, at least the way the voters intended it in my view, but even if you accept that park improvements are something we ought to be doing with PSVS money, at this time, given the priorities that the city has to consider, I would say that this is a much lower priority than some of the other problems that we have. And so in the spirit of the guidance given to us in the city's resolution creating this committee, I would say that not only do I believe that park improvements are not what the voters contemplated when they voted on Measure N, I also think this is a very low priority considering the budgetary constraints that the city finds itself bound by at this time. And so in that spirit, I would move that we make a finding that these 5 items are not consistent with the PSVS priorities.
The motion from Vice Chair Campbell, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Vice Chair Campbell and a second by Committee Member Abernathy that these are not consistent with the Public Safety and Vital Services measure. Any other comment from my colleagues?
Just to be clear, I wanted to make a finding that they're not consistent with the priorities.
With the priorities,
That's
sorry.
I'm taking language straight out of the
Gotcha.
the city resolution.
That's a very good point. So that they are consistent, but they are not the right priority.
They could be, but I'm just saying they're
Could
not.
be consistent.
Yes, I stick with the original language of my motion.
Okay. So with that, there's no further questions or comments. Let's vote.
Whenever we vote on these in the negative, it's always.
Oh my God, what was that? A yes means no and no means yes. It's like the,
Motion is approved with committee members Dewey and Ortiz voting no, and committee member Rojas Mora absent.
Thank you, committee members. That concludes the presentation items and requested items as staff, but there is still opportunity, both per the agenda as well as intent, for committee members, if they want to ask further questions, make further deliberation or recommendations.
anything else from my colleagues?
I do.
Vice Chair Campbell?
Yes. last week when we were provided with some budget proposals for the PSVS money, we did not vote on whether we approved of those items. One of the items on that budget being a transfer of millions of dollars, I think it was approximately $12 million from the PSVS funds to the general fund. And so I would move at this time for a finding by this committee that such a transfer would not be consistent with the Measure N, the actual measure itself. It's not consistent with the mandate given to the city and the authorization for the use of those funds under Measure N.
Can I make a comment?
We need a second.
Well, before we get into deliberation, let's see if we have a second.
Second.
All right, go for it. Committee Member Avery.
So would you, if you remember right, I raised the issue last meeting. Could we propose those funds, those being transferred to the general fund, be earmarked for police and fire only, and not into the general fund in general, but for the purpose of what we're here for, and for police and fire, is my comment or question.
Yeah. This committee can provide that feedback to the council. This committee can provide that feedback to the council. That is definitely part of it, either through the motion or individually when we're done with this portion, with the business portion, and we get around to commissioner comments. But if that's the will of this, but I don't think that you're saying that. I think you're saying that, you know, your preference is, I'm sorry, I should let you.
Right. Well, yeah, I can speak to that. There was a ballot measure put to the people of the city, and it was very narrowly described in the ballot measure language itself. Now, we know that there was a 12 or 13 page ordinance that measure was meant to enact, and that's legally what happened. And that ordinance contained priorities that were not specifically described in the language of the ballot measure itself, and were not highlighted during the marketing for the ballot measure. And so when we're trying to figure out or divine the intent of the voters, when this barely passed, then we have to consider that. I don't think that there's any ambiguity in the language of what was on the ballot or in the actual ordinance itself about leftover money being just transferred to whatever we want to spend it on. And so that's the nature of my motion. The city council, if they wished, could recategorize, or as Mr. Clegg put it, engage in a shell game to move the money from one pot to another. But it's like you have money in one pocket and you're only allowed to spend money in the other pocket on your lunch. So you pull the money out of the pocket you're not allowed to spend, you put it in the other pocket. Oh, now it's there, now I can spend it. It just seems kind of silly. But my point is, I want to send a message to the city council that created this committee, asking for our oversight to act on the behalf of the people of the city who are paying this tax, to make recommendations on funding priorities for the measure. And I think it's pretty much clear on its face, without any kind of ambiguity at all, that transferring money to the general fund from this fund because the general fund doesn't have enough money is not what this ballot measure was intended for. And that's why I bring this motion.
So if I can make some comments, I would say that I agree with your intent. I agree that this is probably not what necessarily PSVS, not necessarily what we as the representatives of the community would want to see PSVS dollars go for, which is plugging a hole in the budget. We want, at least my opinion is that those dollars should be put to work. One of the interesting things that I hear a lot on this dais is how little voters voted for this measure, and how hard it is for us to divine their wishes based on what little information, what scant information was put in front of them. And I think that that's operating from a very false premise, unfortunately. We know the intent of the voters. The intent of the voters was to pass the measure. Whether or not that happened by 1 vote or 1 million votes is immaterial. The measure is the law, and the voters' intent was to pass it. As the person who ran the campaign, the fact that we won it by 90-something votes in an anti-tax community that had tried for years to do a sales tax, I kind of take it actually as a badge of honor that we were able to get it through. But I take your point on the larger issue, but I think we have to be clear about something. At the end of the day, if we're really talking mechanics, if we're really talking legalese, if we're really talking about the basics, this is a general fund tax. So we do make, it is a general fund tax. It is by the law of California, it is a general fund. It cannot go to a specific purpose. It is a general tax. So we have to be careful about that. And again, I think our job here, and I think when I see us talk about something that was never contemplated in the campaign, the traffic calming measures, we're doing our job of not trying to divine or try to, look at the election results and get what was somebody thinking back in November of 2018 when they voted for this. But what does a constituent of Bakersfield in the ward that I'm representing want from this body and their city council today? That, I think, is really our job. And to that point, I agree with you, but I probably just on a procedural basis, because of that issue of this is a general tax, can't vote for the motion.
I'd like to respond to that. With all due respect and in all candor, I believe the campaign for this tax was deceptive. And so maybe, deception works in politics, and people vote for things not knowing what they vote for. And you get what you vote for. So, but there is a committee that is designed to give feedback and to provide oversight to the city council. And that's what I'm doing here. And that's why I'm offering my opinion. And in my opinion, it's a bait and switch. It's not a shell game. It was deceptive to the voters. And now we've expanded our government significantly to spend all of the money from this tax. And now when we have some economic hard times and the general fund can't make it work with the general fund taxes, we've got to borrow from the PSVS fund that the voters didn't intend. So we have these legal technicalities. Oh yeah, it's a general fund, but of course it is. But the rest of the general fund doesn't have an oversight committee. The people of this community were upset when they were told that their sewer rates were going to increase by, $750 per household? If an average household is about 3 people in this city, the sales tax on the types of things that we pay sales tax on, that costs each household about $700 to $750 annually in sales tax from this tax. Now, it's taken 1% at a time. Every time you buy groceries, every time you buy gas, every time you buy a car, you pay a little bit at a time. But you're still spending approximately what the proposal was for a sewer rate increase per household. And there's no outrage because nobody pays attention. Nobody sees this. And our job as the oversight committee is to hold the city accountable by informing the public of these things and raising the concerns when these proposals are brought up. So wake up, voters. Look at it. You got upset with a $700 increase on your sewer rate, and it's crickets when it's $700 in your sales taxes. And then the money's being used to do things like make traffic jams and to shore up for lack of foresight in other parts of the city's budget. So that's what people need to be aware of. They're spending just as much money on sales tax as they would have paid on this proposed sewer increase. And people got upset about the sewer increase, but nobody says anything about, except for us. That's why we're here on this committee. So I'm trying to make the voices of the taxpayers who are bearing this burden heard. And so to that extent, I speak in support of the motion because we should tell the city council, the voters didn't vote for a special tax when we were promised 100 new police officers. That's what we're going to use the money for. It's going to make $50 million in revenue. It makes twice that, but we're going to spend it on all this other stuff. And we're also going to shore up your lack of foresight in planning and your lack of spending discipline in other areas of the city by taking whatever's left and just throwing it into the general fund. So that's why I bring the motion.
Committee Member Abernathy.
Right. We were told in the campaign and that it was going to be about $25 million a year. It's $100 million, and it's been that way for 5-6 years. and a hiring binge went on, and no anticipation that maybe we're going to have to fix a urinal in the police headquarters and some of these other miscellaneous things that have been coming up. And now we're in this big financial mess on a serious issue, which is the sewer situation. So, yeah, I think it's very important. I think when you say what the voters want today, what they want today is this city has to get a hold of its spending, because they went on a hiring binge and took all the PVS money and have spent it all. And now even your regular budgeted items, you can't, keep police stations and other things repaired, and a roof repair and all the things that we know happen. So, yeah, I think I'm angry and the public's angry about it, because we figure you folks have planned this all out and we wouldn't have the situation, but where was the cushion? We have no cushion. So, yeah, I support the proposal, the motion.
Committee Member Avery?
I'm not going to make a political statement. I do not support the proposal. I stand by my recommendation that we need to support fire and police by earmarking the extra funds that are available and move it to the general fund to support the people that protect us. And that's what this committee, I believe, is called, the public safety. So I'm for transferring the money, but earmarking it only for fire and safety, salary and wages.
Committee Member Harmon?
Yeah, Member Avery, are you proposing, or would the proposal be to have a separate motion earmarking it just for those? But as is, it's just a general transfer. And maybe I'm just jaded, but I've been told a lot in campaigns over the years. So I do sympathize with the chair's comments that, well, what is the law? And the law is certainly that it's a general fund tax. But in our job as an oversight committee, it seems very difficult to provide oversight if you don't know where the money's being spent. So for that, I support the motion as is, where we just can't say where in the priority hierarchy this transfer is.
So being the new kid on the block here, I thought we had the authority to at least recommend to the city council. I don't know what authority I even have beyond this committee. But I think we need to send a message that we support the fire and policemen that keep us safe.
Yeah. So just in terms of process, the method that we use
That might be optics
and
only.
no, I get you. But the method that we use to send those messages are a couple ways. One are the votes on the procedures and any commentary from the votes, and you saw in the minutes, and if you can look at the minutes from earlier meetings, and then the memos that staff produces to the city council on the budget, and specifically the PSVS items, that gets put in there. We can take a formal motion as a body, and then we can also provide our own individual commissioner or committee member comments, and those are provided to staff and provided to the city council as well. Okay. I think we have a motion in a second and potentially some.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to the comments is that one way we can communicate to the city council that we support the police and fire is by voting in favor of police and fire spending, which I've never voted against a single proposal on this committee that was for the police department or the fire department. And because I see those as consistent with the PSVS priorities. We don't have the power to dictate what the money's used for. Obviously, all of this is just advisory.
Yeah.
But what you're proposing is earmarking the money. What I'm saying is telling the city council, we don't think it's within the priorities of the PSVS measure to simply give them a blank check. So I don't think we're disagreeing here. I think you should vote for my motion and then we'll take up yours.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Because I was not here last week. I did read the materials, but can we walk through again, just very, very briefly, City Manager Clegg, this fund transfer? What is proposed? And is it that open-ended?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. From I think a practical standpoint, I think it would be fair to say that it is a unencumbered transfer. We're not marking those funds for specific purposes. What I described at our last meeting, though, is that while we're not marking, exactly every dollar of where that 11.9 is going in the general fund, the alternative is that we make $11.9 million of reductions in the general fund if we didn't make the transfer. And again, I think this is just for the, again, benefit of the committee and the public as to, why we would even propose, something like this, because I think of the intent of the measure. Our reality with the general fund, it does, I mentioned last week meeting as well, it does fund some of our general fund activities. There's a little bit of human resources, technology services, finance, a little bit of our public works general services, streets. But 80% of the general fund is police and fire personnel. And so for us to achieve an $11 million in reductions to the general fund means we would cut police and fire positions. And I'm not suggesting that that's the intent of the motion. I understand the intent of the motion. I'm just being clear about why are we doing the transfer. It's to continue to provide general fund services that are very core services that otherwise would be impacted in a way I don't think that the public's intent was either, to reduce police and fire staffing. And I'm not playing games about, we would threaten to take away police and fire to protect all these other things. When 80% of the budget is police and fire personnel costs, there's not much else to cut. The general fund, and again, there's been, several times we've covered this topic over the years. There's not other funds to turn to. There's no other operating funds available in the budget.
But I do have a procedural question.
Yes.
I see we don't have a city attorney rep here today.
Correct.
Now getting that clarification, I guess I have a question of whether we could even vote on something like that and be consistent with the law that requires us, because that's the real piece. It's the back end piece.
I think as you're making recommendations to the council, it's within purview of this committee to make recommendations to the council. The council can take those recommendations and review them with the city staff and city attorney, but I think this committee can make recommendations to the council.
So then I will have no choice but to vote for the motion. My recommendation and my request of my colleagues and of staff would be is if this $12 million is really necessary, then staff should return to this body with a list of where that $12 million is going and ask this body to vote on those specific things, because that is the process that we have always used. This, to my recollection, is the first time we've ever had something where it's just been a total fund transfer that isn't for a specific purpose, isn't for a savings, isn't for a pension fund trust. They have always been for a specific purpose.
I don't mean to question the intent of your comment, but just factually, we have done this twice before. So last year it was $9 million, and the year before it was $8 million transfer.
Vice Chair Campbell.
I don't have any illusions about what will happen.
Yeah, they're going
The
to.
city council will vote to transfer this money because it's necessary, and I'm sure they'll find it's necessary to shore things up. The reason I'm bringing this motion is I want to send a message that's part of our oversight role to tell the city council, we don't think this is the way this money is supposed to be spent. And so they need to figure out a way to get the spending under control so they don't have to dip into this other fund every time they have a shortfall. And it seems like that's just kind of baked in now in the budget process. 8 million one year, then 9 the next, now 12. What's it going to be next year? 15? And we have less PSVS revenue than we've had before because there was there were a bunch of people charging the tax in unincorporated parts of the municipal area, and so now we're shorter revenues, and then of course the economic projections show that perhaps there's I don't know if there's a recession coming, but there may be economic hard times ahead where we have even less revenue. So we should be less anxious to spend all the money and then some. And this really needs to be brought under control. That's the feedback I want to give the city council. That's why I bring this motion. I know what they're going to do. We don't have the power to stop the city council. They're the ones elected to do these things. We're appointed to give them advice. And that's what my motion is to give them advice.
Can I make one final point? I want to make be very much on the record. I'm pro-police and fire, and I want to send a message to City Council that we got to find a way to pay our police officers and fire officers appropriately and staff it appropriately. And I believe this extra money, given that Mr. Clegg talked about the percentage of the fund that supports police and fire, I think by making this transfer, we're sending a message to our police and fire chiefs that we support them. So, enough said by me.
Thanks. All right. Again, I think.
Well, I just want to add, I won't accept the idea that voting this way shows we don't support the police and fire, okay? Because nobody's,
Yeah.
that's a pretty rough thing to try to say on this budget issue.
And I would agree. And I do want to clarify here, my former comments were not necessarily in defense of the spending. They were in defense of the measure, in defense of how we got here. I am just as concerned with others on this dais about the fiscal situation of the city. So with that, there are no other questions. Call the question, Madam Clerk.
Please vote electronically. Motion is approved with Committee Member Avery voting no and Committee Member Rojas Mora absent.
All right. Next item, please, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner comments.
Any commissioner comments?
I have one other thing to bring up here.
Vice Chair.
Sorry to
All good.
drag this out. I know the city council has previously taken advice from this committee. The city council obviously has some turnover. This committee has had some turnover over the years since the measure was passed. There have also been some changes in circumstances, and that is the revenue changes we talked about a moment ago. Tax revenue being taken from unincorporated areas has caused us to revise our projections. Given the changes in circumstances economically and on the makeup of the city, I feel like there's a general sense that what was previously voted on is permanent and can never be changed. And so to that end, the ongoing use of PSVS money is never brought back to this committee for oversight or any kind of prioritization. And given the change in circumstances, I would move that this committee resolve to simply invite the city council to refer the entire PSVS budget to this committee if they wish feedback in retrospect to determine whether any changes, whether we would recommend any changes in its use.
If I could second it, I would, but I can't.
I'll second for you.
All right. Any other questions or any other comments? So the motion, is it motion?
Yes.
Motion by Vice Chair Campbell is that we recommend to the City Council that the entire PSVS budget, including ongoing spending, comes back to the PSVS committee for review and recommendations.
Please cast your vote electronically. Motion is unanimously approved.
If I may, Chair, I should have asked this before the motion, but I presumed that was not on a one-time basis by the motion maker as an ongoing basis.
Let's start with one and see where we get.
Let's see what the city council sends us. I mean, I'm inviting them to, if they want our help in making suggestions for saving money, then we're happy to offer it. And I just wanted to bring it up so that we don't have this general sense that it's set in stone and the concrete has set, and now we can't make any changes to it.
We're receptive of a counter.
We serve at the pleasure of the council.
Exactly. And that counter could be, there's now a vacancy.
Could be.
All right. Any other comments from my colleagues? All right. With that, I think we are adjourned.